In this Houseplant Care 101 series episode, I'll be discussing all about ficus plants. I've been wanting to do a ficus video forever, so I'll be sharing some of the different varieties you can find at your local greenhouses. I'll also be discussing how to care for ficus, so everything from how to choose a healthy ficus at the store, because there are definitely certain things you want to look out for specifically with ficus, and how to water them, lighting needs. I know lighting is confusing for a lot of people with ficus because they definitely have certain requirements. And then I'll be sharing how to repot a ficus. I'll be repotting a Ficus shiveriana that I found recently. It's a really interesting ficus that's come onto the market, and sharing everything that I do and everything you need to keep in mind when you're repotting a ficus. Now, ficus plants actually belong to a really diverse genus. There are over 800 species of ficus, which I did not realize that. They've been cultivated for centuries. So they're renowned for their adaptability to indoor environments. So even if they're not in their natural habitat, they do really well in our homes. So that really makes them an ideal choice for a houseplant, whether it's in an office or in your home. And they're not just aesthetically pleasing. Ficus plants, they're also known for their air purifying abilities. So they help to remove the common indoor pollutants that we have, and they also improve the air quality. I really think that the growing awareness of the health and well-being benefits of having indoor plants in our home has boosted the ficus's popularity. They enhance the indoor air quality, they reduce stress, and they contribute to a soothing environment. Now again, they come in various species and varieties. Each has its own unique foliage and growth habits. Probably the most popular one that I see is the Ficus lyrata, which is known as the Fiddle Leaf Fig, and it's very, very famous. It has these beautiful, striking, large leaves. I see them all the time in magazines, for interior design. I have one in my home. They're absolutely beautiful. So with the right care, they are relatively easy to maintain and they don't require constant attention. So they can thrive, with moderate care. So whether you're a seasoned indoor houseplant collector or you're just starting out on your plant journey, ficuses can be an excellent choice to bring a touch of nature into your living space. This Houseplant Care 101 series is sponsored by rePotme.com. With rePotme, you can have all of your houseplant supplies delivered right to your door. They are a one-stop shop for all of your houseplant, orchid, or succulent needs. They have custom handmade houseplant soils ranging from tropical houseplants, cactus and succulents, pothos, snake plants, and more. I cannot live without their clear slotted orchid pots. They have amazing houseplant fertilizers and so much more. I've included their link in my description below, and you can get 10% off any soil with my code Ashley. So one of the most important steps is actually choosing a very healthy ficus at the store. The first thing to do when choosing your ficus, and really the first thing to do with any plant that you're choosing, is just to really investigate the leaves. So choose one that first of all has really healthy looking leaves, because that indicates a healthy plant. You want the leaves to look vibrant and glossy. You don't want any spots that could indicate disease. And also check for any signs of pests. So get in there closely because those pests can be kind of small, but you want to check under the leaves, on top of the leaves if you see anything that looks powdery or cobwebby or any like little black bugs on there. It's not worth bringing it home because it can take a lot of effort to get rid of pests and it can spread easily to your other plants and it's just not worth it. The next thing I would suggest is choosing the size ficus that you really want. There are usually different options at the store. So if you want a smaller one or a larger one, for maybe a few dollars more, you can get a large one. And even though ficuses can be good growers, they still take a while. So another little trick that I've been doing lately when I'm choosing my plants at the store is to see if I can get one that has multiple plants in the pot, because I feel like you get more for your money that way. If you can spend the same amount of money and there's like 2 or 3 plants in the pot versus just one, the plant is healthier. If one plant dies, you have 2 other ones or 1 other one that you can work with. You have more to propagate from if you want to. So I just think that's like a helpful little thing to keep in mind. Also, another helpful trick is that if you want to take your plant home and not have to repot it in that first year that you bring it home, when you're checking the roots of the plant, choose one that isn't a packed full pot of roots. So choose one that has, not a full pot of roots, and then you won't have to repot it right away unless the soil is too saturated, or there's some other issues, or you want to put a more well-draining soil. In those cases, definitely repot. But if the soil looks good and it's not too packed up full of roots, then you can just, save yourself the time of having to repot until it gets to that point. Speaking of roots, always check the roots, make sure they're not mushy, make sure that the soil isn't oversaturated. At some of these stores, you'll see that the plants there can be somewhat overwatered in that they're just left sitting in water in the cover pots. So that's something to keep in mind every time you're shopping, is to make sure that the roots look healthy. Lastly, don't forget to rinse the leaves off when you do bring it home. That way you can get rid of any pests that you didn't see and any eggs that may be on there. And then maybe quarantine the plant for 1 or 2 weeks so you can keep an eye on it, separate it from your other plants. And that way, if there is a pest issue, you'll notice it and it won't spread. So you have your beautiful ficus and you're wanting to learn more about repotting, what type of soil, what type of pot, just important things to keep in mind for ficus care. So when you do bring your plant home from the store, it's really important to give it some time to adjust to its new environment. It's important to note ficuses don't enjoy a lot of change all at once, and what they'll start doing is they'll start dropping their leaves. And that's a big reason we get these plants, is because of their big, beautiful leaves. And a lot of people say, I don't know why my ficus is dropping their leaves. Well, they don't like a lot of change, so slow and steady with every new step that you introduce to the plant is the best way. So place your ficus in its new location and give it some time to get used to the new lighting and the humidity and so on. Once it's been a few weeks, your ficus should be adjusted, and at that point, you can think about repotting it. Many of these ficuses are used as living decor in the main parts of our homes, and part of that is choosing a really beautiful pot. So if you decide you want to plant your ficus directly into your pot instead of using a nursery pot, make sure to use one that is only 1 to 2 inches bigger than its nursery pot that you purchased it in, and that make sure that that pot also has very, very good drainage. Some of these decorative pots just have terrible drainage and they're way too big. So you can still use that pot that you really like, and just plant your ficus into a nursery pot, which I'll cover some of that. Now, ficuses usually only need to be repotted every couple years. So what I like to do is plant them in clear nursery pots. This way I don't have to repot often, and I can change out the cover pot as much as I want to. Plus, they're clear so I can keep an eye on the roots and the moisture in the soil. Today I am repotting my beautiful Ficus Shiveriana. It's adjusted, it's settled in, and now it's time for me to repot it because I do not like the soil that it's in. So it's not super root bound, but again, I don't like the soil. It's not well draining, and I feel like for ficus, I need everything to be just so in order to help it thrive. I get my clear pots from rePotme.com, and they're great because I can reuse them as many times as I need to, and like I said, I can keep an eye on the roots and the soil. So the big deal with having the right soil, the main thing is that we're trying to prevent overwatering. Overwatering doesn't mean that you're giving your plant too much water. It means that the soil is retaining too much moisture and is preventing airflow from the roots. And so the roots become diseased, and then that's the easiest way to kill our plants. However, if you have very well draining soil, it's very difficult to overwater our plants, no matter like how much water we're giving them. So if your soil is well draining, those chances of developing root rot is greatly reduced. So you can easily create your own soil mixture. I usually say 50% potting mix to retain moisture and 50% some other substrate like perlite or pumice to encourage drainage. There are also customized soils available specifically made for ficus. I'm repotting with rePotme's new ficus soil. I'm so excited about it. You can see here the drastic difference between the soil that was in this pot for this ficus versus the rePotme's ficus soil. Whether you choose to make your own soil or purchase a customized one, the benefit is so worth it. You know, it's worth the time, it's worth the investment, especially when the plant gets repotted so rarely. Ficus's roots can be somewhat fragile, especially when you have a smaller ficus. As I mentioned, these plants are so sensitive to change that it's a good idea when you're repotting not to disturb or damage the roots too much. What works for each of us varies, of course, but I tend to not disturb the root ball too much. Gently remove, some of the old soil, helps to encourage the roots to spread, but too much disturbance means that the plant focuses on root repair instead of that foliage growth that we're looking for. Lighting is a really big deal for ficuses. I hear a lot that ficus are super low light tolerant and they don't need a lot of light to thrive. They can, put out a bunch of new growth in low lighting conditions. And personally, I have not really had that experience with ficus plants. I find that they enjoy a good amount of light, and especially the ones that have variegation. If you have the ones that have very, very dark leaves, they can probably survive in lower light conditions, but most of them in their natural habitats enjoy a bright indirect light. And I get asked a lot, like, what does bright indirect light mean? Because that's like the Goldilocks zone for a lot of these tropical houseplants. So bright indirect light means bright light, but avoiding direct sunlight from hitting the leaves, which can burn them. For example, if we sit right next to a window and it's really lit up and it has really good light, it doesn't burn our skin, but we're just getting a lot of that light. But if we sit next to a window that has like direct sunlight, like just kind of blasting through the window onto our skin, we will feel that, and the chances of getting a sunburn from that are a lot higher than just sitting next to a bright light. So, try to keep that in mind when trying to figure out what's the best spot for your tropical plants or for your ficus, is that bright but indirect light. Another helpful tip is to rotate your ficus once a month, and it helps to ensure that all the sides receive adequate light. Sometimes we see our plants get a little bit lopsided, and if we just turn our plants, that will really, really help with that. Now, a lot of us don't have the perfect bright indirect light in our homes as an option, so there are lots and lots of great grow lights on the market, and these grow lights are really good during the winter months, especially with that reduced natural light. And don't be afraid to experiment with different locations in your home to try to find the ideal lighting conditions for your plant. And don't forget to dust the leaves regularly. This will ensure maximum light absorption because these are the solar panel of the plant, and if they're covered in even a light layer of dust, that can greatly impact how much light the plant absorbs. So the right time to water your ficus is generally when it's about halfway dry, so the top half of the soil feels dry to the touch. If you have a large ficus, it can be hard to tell if the bottom half of the pot has still a good amount of water in it. So using a moisture meter can really, really help with this. And if you're watering during the colder months, I do recommend using room temperature water. This will help avoid shocking the roots of the plant. Again, be cautious not to overwater, as ficus plants are susceptible to root rot. Important to note that overwatering does not mean you are giving the plant too much water. It is really important to give our plants a good drink when they're thirsty. This is something that I was very confused about when I first started plant collecting and taking care of plants. I felt like if I gave my plant too much water, I would overwater it. No, it's good to give them a good amount of water. But if you're going to give them a good amount of water, which they do need, make sure that your soil is well draining, your pots have very good drainage, and you're not leaving your plant sitting in water. Those are really the three main causes: soil not well draining enough, pots without decent drainage, and leaving your plant sitting in water. I'd say those three are very, very conducive to causing root rot and overwatering in your plant. When you're watering your plant, try to avoid watering the foliage and the leaves directly, because if you get water on them, it can cause fungal issues, especially if you don't have a fan running all the time or a lot of airflow. I usually use a watering can with a narrow spout because that helps me with precise watering. Fertilizing is really important when it comes to ficus because these are such foliage intensive plants. They really need to be fed and fertilized in order to put out growth and have those beautiful, beautiful leaves. So first of all, it's important to fertilize during the growing season, specifically spring and summer, and I recommend a balanced fertilizer. You can dilute the fertilizer to half strength to prevent over-fertilization. I would definitely start with half strength, especially when you're first starting to fertilize your plant. It's also helpful to flush the soil with plain water every few months. This will help remove excess minerals, excess salt, and basically flushing is just like pouring water over the top and just letting all of those minerals flush out, and don't leave that plant sitting in that like flushed out water. We have a super knowledgeable plant community, so if you have any additional ficus tips, definitely leave them in the comments below. It's so helpful for all of us. And if you'd like to see future plant episodes in your newsfeed, make sure to subscribe. We also have a fantastic community on Instagram. I have many other episodes on plant care in my Houseplant Care 101 series, and a huge thank you again to rePotme. They are absolutely wonderful. I love their houseplant care products, and I have included links to all of their products below that I love. And don't forget to use code Ashley to get 10% off any of their custom made houseplant soil. All right, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. You will definitely be seeing me soon. Bye.